colleagues, friends. No, it has been a privilege for us to be in Lviv, in this fantastic city, which is so European. It was really fantastic, and you were the perfect hosts, and it really meant a lot to all of us. So I would like to share a few thoughts with you, and then I'm extremely happy to continue your debate. I see how many lectures you've already had. I don't know these lectures. I haven't followed. You have, I guess. So it's good to benefit from your collected wisdom. Before doing that, just to say two things. I'll try to keep it very practical, hopefully also short enough. Second, all I say on personal behalf. So I do not represent the Commission here. This is myself speaking. I'm 51 years of age. I've been half of my life now in Brussels, in the bubble, as we call it, working for the institutions, first in the European Parliament, now in the Commission. And I was born near Bonn in Germany. Back then it was West Germany. I've always taken a great interest in Central Europe. And my wife is Hungarian, so I've followed transformation, as we still call it, a little bit. So I would like to go along three main questions. So what are we actually facing? How do I define, how do I see populism? Second, how does it manifest itself? So looking at a few regions of example, but I'm afraid it's a global phenomenon. And then I very much like the title of your entire circle of lectures and study, how to bring about a better future. So that appeals to us, and it says better. So let's make it better than it is. It means it isn't all good. So what is this about? Just to share a few things. Certainly, when you're confronted with populism, it is not about credibility. Yeah? It is not about integrity. It is certainly not about offering any solutions. So it is not on substance. It is always attempted to attack based on events, based on problems, based on fears. But normally it is directed against someone. So it's not about the person who says it, but about the person who is aggressed, so to say. It's the old caste, the elites, the establishment, whatever you want to call it. In Central Eastern Europe, it is very often the EU or the liberal West. That might ring a bell. So you need an enemy. Without an enemy, without fear and problems, no populism, doesn't work. And if you don't have an enemy, you can invent one. There have been prime examples. Look at what Mr. Orban established in Hungary. I don't need to spell this out. Second point to this general observation. We have a booster for this disease called populism, and this is quite clearly social media. Social media is meant to be addictive. I remember the old days in the 1980s when there was one gaming hall in Bonn, in my hometown, and my parents would tell me, you never go there, this is very dangerous, these machines can, create addictions. And I was like, okay, never enter this place, there must be the devil behind the door. And now it's so much easier. We have this one, our personal assistant, our distraction, our refuge. And it is made and designed to make you addicted to it. And it starts with kids. And the combination of this stimulus with different ways of raising attention, of animizing, of intimidating is just very toxic. So this is driven by fears, as I said. This is driven by emotions. And sometimes, of course, politics, democracy can be very dull. So if you manage to startle, to incite emotions, fears, rumors, opinions, then you got them triggered. Are these people seen as problem solvers, as people to trust? These populists, certainly not. What are they seen as? I would say it's kind of it's a counter poison. Yeah? In order to fight something people are reluctant or wary of or are afraid of even. So let's take a closer look at some regions perhaps. Once again, this is purely my perspective on things. I would be very happy to hear from your perspectives as well. And I see that many countries are represented. I would like to take first a look at Central East Europe. I was one of the co-organizers of a conference at my university in Passau in Bavaria in 1996. It was only 7 years after the fall of the Iron Curtain and the wall. And we organized a seminar on the fall of the Iron Curtain and the new freedom and the accession to the EU and building transforming societies into pluralistic democracies, into market economies, pretty much becoming like the West. This has taken so much longer than many of us thought. First, EU accession has taken longer. So, dear Ukrainian friends, it's always two years away, but it will happen. And then the transformation of the party systems. I then wrote my master thesis about Slovakia, its accession to the EU, and I discussed the structure with my professor, and he said, well, this is all very good, but you need some transfer. Bring your own idea. And one of my questions I came up with is, when can we call Slovakia, a very young country, came from the split of Czechoslovakia, when can we say this is qualified as a stable, strong, lasting democracy? And I came to the conclusion, once we have a party system that is a bit more stable, and where even when the pragmatic forces, pro-European rule of law-based forces are in power, you would also have a democratic opposition. So you would have real alternatives, not just the wheel of fortune, everything changing inside out all the time. I'm afraid we haven't seen that until this day. There has been a reversing moment. We are not there yet. So we see how fragile this is. Also, why is it so fragile? What are the issues on people's mind? The hope back then was very high. We exceed the European Union, democracy, stable democracy, and fundamental rights, and there will be wealth. We will be doing better. Now, to give a very extreme example, Russia. They were on that course. And there was chaos, of course. If in a country never ever before there existed a free market economy, the whole system breaks down. All your markets trading partners broke down. So what the populist forces, which are now the old new dictators, managed is to associate in people's mind change and democracy with instability, chaos, and economic decline. So they said, this is bad for you. And this worked. So you need a strong state. You need somebody to take care. It doesn't work when the individual has rights, and this is bottom up. What was the main governing dictatorial instrument we had in the Soviet times? It wasn't money, although this could sometimes help. You see the indebtedness of Poland, Hungary, to maintain some standard of living. It wasn't even military force. It was fear. It was fear. And they have, like a genius, managed to manipulate people and play with their fears, even fears of their neighbor. It wasn't all very nice in the Soviet world and everybody loves everybody. No, you were supposed to stay in your little basin and country. You were not supposed to mix. And borders were deliberately moved and people expelled in order to create antagonism and fear. And I read, I think a few years ago, a very good essay by Herta Müller. She's a Romanian from a German-speaking family, Nobel Prize winner. And she said, let's never forget, the main instrument was fear. And fear still works. If you look at the campaigns, many populist parties, many dictators, but also, how should I call it, chauvinist leaders in Eastern and Central Europe play. This is about fear. Fear classically of the foreigner, fear of the migrant, fear even of refugees, fear of the liberal West, as I said. But this is not a phenomenon linked only to transformation countries of Central and Eastern Europe. On our minds, and we see it every day, unfortunately, in the United States, this has reached a new height, a new disgusting height, a new peak. One has to be careful, of course. It is an old democracy with an old constitution, so to say, amendments, which also lives by the principles which are accepted. One also should bear in mind, I would say the US system is always a few years, maybe 1 decade ahead of what happens in Central and Western Europe too. So we shouldn't be arrogant. We shouldn't say this is all their mistake. They're Americans, they can't help it. It doesn't work. On top, it is a very personalized system. It is personalized in every campaign for the House of Congress, for the Senate, as much as for the House of Representatives, where you vote every 2 years. So this is a constant campaign trail. And during campaigns, of course, there is polarization. And to some degree, of course, polarization is fully normal and legitimate. You have to say what you stand for in distinction to the other forces. But of course, with the presidential democracy, this is very prone to such maneuvers. We've also seen similar attempts in Canada. They failed because of the US neighbor. So Mark Carney won it, although nobody expected him to. And his really landmark speech, I would call it, at Davos, I can only recommend all of you to watch again on YouTube or wherever. Extremely well phrased, very lasting impression on many of us. The same in Australia, the same type of populism, Trump style, lost once again because people had Trump and they had enough of having one such neighbor, and they knew we have to stick together. A brief word on my own country. I'm German, as I mentioned. I was born in the jolly West, so near Bonn, the land where milk and honey flows, people might say. I mean, it's a wealthy, it's a dynamic, it's an open place, which hosted the government and the parliament for many years. The younger ones will not remember. Still, in Germany, after reunification, we've had populist sentiments, right-wing parties, left-wing extremists. But then we said, okay, this is an East German phenomenon. This is part of the old Eastern Bloc, and they haven't lived in democracy. It's different, and they are different, and it'll take time. So A, this has taken much more time. B, people have been arrogant, Western politicians, and negligent. If you want to reach people, you have to be there constantly. You have to be at their level on the market square when they go to shops and whatever. But nowadays, and it's not only nowadays, it's for a few years now, we see the same phenomenon in all German länder, in all German regions. So even in my jolly nice hometown of Bonn, you have populists strong, around 15 to 20%. And that is only the right wing. You have left-wing populists too. And sometimes I would dare say, in Germany we have different types of left-wing extremists, and one is a former communist, Mrs. Wagenknecht. She has 80% in common with the AfD, with the right-wing extremists, because she's nationalist, anti-European. The only thing where they differ is their view a little bit on Russia, but they're quite close. And she tries to say on Trump, we're having different views. But the methods and the fears and the manipulation, also the attitude to refugees and migrants, is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So it is not the same, but it is similar. How has this also happened? You have to see that in the 1950s, by people's birth, it would be quite clear who they would vote for. There was what we call a milieu, an environment. You were part not of a caste, but of certain circles. Now, if you were Christian or even Catholic, you would vote for first Zentrumspartei and then CDU Konrad Adenauer. If you were a worker, and that was pretty much 30 to 40% of the population, you would vote for the Social Democrats, full stop. And there were some tiny liberals in the middle, maybe more the entrepreneurs. This has dissolved. Societal structure has completely changed. And nowadays, we even see that workers are by majority, so that's not by 50%, but the biggest share of workers and trade union members votes AfD, votes right-wing. So this has dissolved. The churches too do not have this standing anymore, do not guide people as more. They're more seen as paternalizing sometimes. So this has completely changed. These, origins, these surroundings have dissolved to a strong degree. And therefore it is easy for others to come in all of this losing of our loss of orientation and all this complexity, in all this uncertainty and all these crises, to say, I come with real solutions. No, they don't come with real solutions. They come with cheap solutions. But people long for a clear circumstance. They long for a clear solution. They're wary of, not black and white, but gray all the time. Last example I want to give, Spain. There you more have the classical left-right polarization. There are some parties now in between, some parties even further to the right, regional or separatist parties. But this also for the past decades, we must say, has seen the country really blocked to a large degree. Now, I come to the third part, and this I must say is the dearest to me. How to ensure a better future. What can we do? So I would like to do one short reference to Philipp Immanuel Kant, 250 years ago. So even more than that, 1784. His definition, and it's one of the few things I kept in mind from my major in history, of enlightenment. So I quote now, enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Self-imposed. Immaturity is the inability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. So to really think freely yourself, your own judgment. This immaturity is self-imposed when its cause lies not in lack of understanding. So you could know, you could see, understand what is happening, but in lack of resolve and courage to use it without guidance from another. So you know what is right, you know what to do, but you don't do it. So sapere aude, have courage to use your own understanding. That is the motto of enlightenment. End of quote. I still find this very striking. Because nowadays we're becoming lazy. We're becoming wary of situations in democracies. And we're becoming even too lazy to read a real newspaper article, to read a real book, to really discuss, to really listen. We read headlines, we consume them all day long, and at the end of the day, we're overfed and we have no idea what happened. We're just constantly terrified by headlines and mostly visual messages, images, and they can be fake. We know it. We can be fake. So we're easily manipulated. And again, we have the opportunity. It is self-imposed. We can nourish ourselves from a good basis, not only from internet fast food and social media fast food. So use your judgment. I would call it information hygiene, also not to expose yourself all day long to what is on the ticker and what people are spreading. Get involved. Resilience and endurance. So endurance also means patience, to tolerate and somehow cope with the insecurity, that there isn't black and white, but gray and complexity. This is a long haul. Also, and I know that you're in partnership with the city of Mainz, I think, or the Episcopate. Mainz is well known for Carnival, like my home region, Bonn and Cologne. Humor is not only a good weapon, it is bringing relief. So I think it is not only our right, but also our obligation to ridicule not, but make fun of, with respect, with a blink of an eye, of the leaders. And you see quite clearly who's not receptive to that, or who's very disturbed when they're being made fun of. I'm not a Bavarian and I don't like them too much, but they have one ritual, the Bavarians. They have around Ash Wednesday a gathering of all the party leaders, of all the parties, and then there is some theater play performed, written about them. And they have actors personifying each of the leaders, and they're making fun of them. And, if you don't sit there laughing your head off about yourself, you're lost. You will never be accepted in Bavarian politics. So this, I find it fantastic. So that's what each and every one of us can do as citizens. Second, politicians. I'm afraid it starts with body language. Usually it's the populists who are all over, who are strong, who are bullies, who, show that they are convinced that they are right, that they are strong, that they are aggressive. And if I look at the, sometimes a little bit wary body language of some of our politicians, thereby you signal that you're wrong, that you are weak, that you are yesterday's man. Of course, when you govern a country for a couple of years, you do start looking different. Then if you go to the gym in the morning after, I don't know, having a good night's rest, and then you can spread your lies again. But again, it starts with the body language. Be honest. Don't bullshit people. Don't say there are no problems. But the narrow path is not say there are no problems, but neither say this is all a disaster. It's never going to go well. We are lost. So you have to raise the problem, say, I understood, I heard you, and then you say how this could be approached. Not solved tomorrow, but which is the right way, so that things will get better. And it is, of course, delivery that will only help in the end. But, this cautious, measured approach. Be authentic, be yourself. Don't perform theater. So take the worries and be present, really, be present. We've had it with the post-communists in the East German Länder. They were really there to talk to people, to listen, to, keep a network alive, be on the market square, have social initiatives. Now it's the right wing doing it. So all of us have to do it. People need that, apparently. A special point for Ukraine and many countries neighboring the EU accession. It's a struggle. It's a long process. It's a hard one. But even once you're in, this is not over it and kingdom of heaven. No, things are more complex still because you have multi-level governance. Yeah, you wouldn't also either. Also, there will be people, I'm quite sure, who say we're giving up sovereignty. We've fought for Ukrainian sovereignty and independence, and now these bullies from Brussels, they take over our sovereignty. We are marginalized. They don't take us seriously. They don't give us the full money. I mean, again, take Poland, which has really blossomed over the past decades, but there too you have a strong nationalist, anti-European sentiment. There too you have people who say this goes much too far. This is not our society. This is completely illiberal. This is not what I wanted. Yeah, and they're marginalizing us. They're not doing, the way it should be done here. Yes, but it's the same for the Germans and the Portuguese and the Spanish, only that they're used to it. Just to say this will come, and you should be prepared. It's not once you join, it's all over and everybody's happy ever after. This is not how it goes. So work continues. And of course, after a war, we've seen also, look at the United States, look at the United Kingdom, even France with de Gaulle. Normally leadership is appreciated, recognized, and after the war they go, okay, but now let's look at the imminent problems, social issues, whatever. So there will be changes, and it's healthy. It's, of course, an opportunity. And it is a constant struggle. Why? Because democracy, and I quoted a famous German lawyer, he said, and he also looked at, enlightenment and investiture. So who calls the shots? Is it the church? Is it the king? And then enlightenment. And he also analyzed democracy and what does it rest on? Who legitimizes? And he said democracy relies on a basis it cannot guarantee. Yeah, it is. You cannot enforce democracy with oppression. Then it's dictatorship. You cannot chase people to vote. Then it's not free democracy. Yeah? You cannot suppress people or enforce that they respect the law. It just doesn't work. So it is built on something it cannot create itself. It is built on accepting rules, basically, on values, on honesty, on fairness, and on having the truth. And this is, of course, the utmost danger at present, that the truth gets lost. Early on, we've had scandals in every country, but normally the truth will at some stage come out. And if it only comes out 40 years later or 50 years later, it will come out. And then it would be written in books. Yeah? So we could learn from it as mankind. I don't take this for granted anymore. And also today, it doesn't really matter what truth comes out 5 days after. It is about the moment, it is about the emotion. But I'm afraid that even the long-term truth will be lost. And truth is also justice. If I look at what Ukraine is now withstanding, the first thing the Russian side is trying to get rid of the truth, denying, camouflaging, covering up, and saying this has all not happened this way. And they have good friends in betraying the truth, of course. So going back to Birkenförde, the conditions you cannot guarantee, you need guardians. You need, above all, a justice system where judges believe in their independence and use it. You need media, diverse, pluralistic media. Also, you need foreign correspondents, not to intervene as foreign spies or agents, as they're called by certain, but to form a second opinion. And this is very hard to build up. Look at Hungary. It's not a non-democracy, but is a democracy in crisis. where the new government had to rebuild. And just yesterday, I think the whole public broadcasters were switched off for a day or two to really have a fresh start. And I started actually with a movie about the Soviet times, just to tell people a certain truth. So building up that truth, that journalism, critical minds will be a big struggle, and it will cost money. There will be public sources, but there must be private sources. There should be, in my view, crowdfunding, and there should be a network of people sticking together to promote this and make sure it exists. Final group, we are Christians. The churches, in my view, have a very, very important role to play. When we were there, we also learned from Roman how the Ukraine Catholic Church was with the people, you explained to us. So they possess credibility. They were there during oppression under Soviet occupation. They're there now. So I think this church has an authority. It doesn't mean it should go around pointing the finger at politicians and say, this one you can vote or must vote, and the other one you do not. No, but they should be the advocates of dialogue, of respect, of conciliation, reconciliation, of hope. And we shouldn't lose hope. We should always say we're going to something better, and it's in our hands. But it requires virtues, it requires values, and we as Christians, I think, can remind each other and also our politicians about it. To conclude, just a very final point, which you might regard as a completely silly idea. Fine, but as said, I don't speak for the Commission here. We're having a global crisis of the, how shall I say, stable democracy, stable democratic world. But as long as we realize that, and those of goodwill stick together, like they do stick together to support Ukraine, I think we can be even stronger a couple of years from now. So we have stable democracies with stable market economies who are reliable trade partners and security partners, not only in Europe. And Europe goes beyond the EU. Europe is all the accession countries. It's even Armenia. You see the increased dialogue now with the EU. It is the UK. It is Norway. And sooner or later, I'm sure, certain of these countries, Iceland, Norway, might even join us. The Canadians. I mean, a colleague joked that can't we sell a couple of islands to the Canadians, and once they have European territories, they could apply for EU membership. They speak French too, and they have some mother tongue English, helps us get rid of our Brussels English. But also Canada, not only, also Australia, New Zealand, Japan, who stand up, who defend their rights, who at the moment, South Korea, bullied also by the current US government, but they understood we are stronger when we're together. And this is exactly what Mark Carney said. And we should seize the moment. And in my view, we also have to look prospectively to other continents for that, very clearly. And of course, ideally, we would then have the United States back in this group. And then we would be extremely strong. And we should do it in 3 areas. Economic issues, so trade, really maybe having a single market one day, in economic security. And we see how we can be blackmailed. I would include also research in that, innovation and education. We have very good European exchange and cooperation programs in these areas. Security, security. We have NATO now, but we see NATO is being transformed, is changing. Europeans are gearing up, but I think it goes much beyond. And if you look at Australia's position in the world and at recent Chinese maneuvers, you know that they're, I think, happy to have partners. And of course, and that is the essential conditio sine qua non, democracy, fundamental rights, separation of powers. This must be the basis. But if in all these areas we do stick together, I think then we are stronger. There's a window of opportunity right now, which we can use. If we don't do it, and once the imminent threat of, for instance, this war, but also the bullying of this current US government is over, many will then say, come on, it's not all so bad. And then they will talk about chlorine chicken and whatever and be against free trade and say that in South Korea, the democratic standards are not exactly like in West Belgium or whatever. So we're in it together. We can be so much stronger. And this, to me, is the global response in that regard. But most of all, I see us as citizens, as Christians, as churches, and get involved. I mean, really also dare to be in politics, I would say. With that, I want to leave it. Thanks for your attention. I hope I added something to what the other speakers could tell you, and I'm super happy to learn about that and discuss with you.